Hello and good evening, gamers. Welcome back to the weekly anime recommendation, the show where I watch a whole bunch of anime, I sort through all the bad ones, and I come back with one good one for you to watch this week. So this week's anime is Odd Taxi. I said Odd Taxi? Oh, anyways, yeah, so this week's anime is Odd Taxi. It's a really good show, I promise, even though it is using anthropomorphic animals as the main characters. Not that we've ever seen that before. But no, it's done in sort of a neo-noir mystery setting. The show follows the main character, Okinawa, as he... Okinawa? I think that's his name. Anyways, the show follows our main character, Okinawa. He's a taxi driver, a walrus, and basically as he gives a bunch of passengers rides around the city, he starts to meet all these really zany, weird characters, and they start to their stories start to become linked together. You start to, as the viewer, you start to put connections together between the different storylines, and it really evolves into sort of a mystery type show. Really, really engaging, really, really interesting. One of the best shows I've seen in a while, and it has really, really, really strong character writing. Basically, every single character in the show is interrelated in some way, and they all have very engaging storylines. They sort of capitalize on the fact that whenever a stranger rides in a taxi, the conversation is sort of without bars. It doesn't have any sort of restraint on it. So the taxi driver, it's a special relationship essentially between the taxi driver and the passenger. And I think that's what the show is really trying to bring about, is explore that dynamic. And they do it really, really well. Some things I liked a lot about the show. I really, really like the characters. I said that already. They really, really carried the show. I also like the humor in the show. It's a pretty funny show. The jokes are very dry humor. It's very sort of chill and low-key. You watch the show and things will happen and you'll sort of forget about them, and then they come back up later in like a joke, and you remember it, but you didn't think a lot of it when it like was first introduced, but it comes up later and it's really funny. I really, really like that element of it. I also really like the sort of chill vibe. It gives me very like 60s jazz, like nighttime jazz vibes. Like a lot of the show consists of him like driving around the city, almost like a podcast. It gives me vibes of what's that show, Midnight Gospel, where they're just sort of talking about, oftentimes they're just sort of having a very philosophical, interesting conversation that isn't really, not really super deep in a sense, but it's intellectually provoking. Like I mentioned before, the show really features a neo-noir mystery type of setting, and it uses a lot of very classic bait and switch type story mechanics. It almost throws you for a loop. It's very, very twisty. If you're into sort of trippy shows that have a lot of big twists that just come out of left field, you'll like this, because many times throughout the show, you'll be thinking there's a certain relationship between the characters, and then another passenger will get in the car and completely changes your perspective on all the characters and everything that's going on. So it's, they rely very heavily on sort of the sting, or that sort of genre of heist mystery movie, I guess. Also, Odokawa, I realized I was saying that wrong earlier. Odokawa, the main character, is so based. He is like the funniest character in the whole show. He's kind of a dry character. There are times like people just stick a gun in his face and he'll just sort of like be like, do it, end me, and kind of dark humor, but it's pretty funny. He's very dry. In a lot of ways, he's very based. He just sort of, things will happen. He just responds in the most dry, deadpan way. So some things I didn't really like about the show. I like a lot of stuff about the show, but so a few things I didn't really like about it. I thought the animation was very mid, and the art style was very mid. Like, it did the job. I mean, it's a slice of life, kind of slow-paced show, so it doesn't really need the best animation. It's not like One Punch Man, where it needs to have these explosions and everything, every scene. But the animation was a little I thought it was a little lackluster. I mean, it does the job, but it was definitely not like not the highest level of production, I would say. Another thing I didn't really like too much about the show is sometimes the pacing was a little bit slow. A lot of times it was paced very well, but sometimes it would kind of drag its feet a little bit and you'd be like, okay, I'm ready for something else to happen. Maybe that's just me being a Gen Zer and wanting things to go a lot faster. Oh, I'm burping. Maybe that's just me being a Gen Zer and wanting things to go a lot faster. There'd be times whenever certain characters on the scene, I'm like, well, okay, I don't get the point of this, and then eventually it would become relevant. But the pacing was just maybe not quite there at a few points. Those are my main two criticisms of the show. All right, so the part you've been waiting for, the ratings. So first of all, I'm gonna rate the characters. The characters I think were the best part of the whole show. There wasn't a character that I didn't engage with. The main character was awesome, the villains were awesome, the side characters were awesome, everything was really awesome. So I'd say the characters were 5 out of 5. The animation, like I said, it was very mid. I think it did the job, and it doesn't really distract from the story, but it didn't really do anything for me, so I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5. I'm sorry, some people I'm sure really liked the animation, but I wasn't a fan, so I'm gonna give that a 2 out of 5. What else did I have on the list here? Oh yeah, so the originality of the story, I gave that a 4 out of 5. It was pretty good, but we've seen sort of the anthropomorphic animal thing a lot, furryism. But I'd say that was a 4 out of 5 for the originality of the story. It was a pretty, I'd say, generic mystery. Wasn't super original about the characters being animals, so I'm going to give that a 4 out of 5. Still pretty original, but not groundbreaking in all regards. And then finally, what was the last thing? Oh yeah, the BS meter. So there was very little fan service at all in the whole story. In fact, if anything, they kind of made fun of fan service. So I'm going to give that a 5 out of 5. But yeah, so that was my rating. I'd highly recommend you watch it, particularly because the show ends on a cliffhanger, and there's a movie that's coming to Crunchyroll this September. So I don't know when that comes out, a few weeks from now. But yeah, so give it a watch, and yeah, it's a good show. I'd highly recommend it. Thanks for watching if you got this far, and I will see you next week with another recommendation.